Good afternoon, everyone. We'd like to welcome you to the Mesa City Council meeting for Monday, February the 28th. All of our council is present. The first item on our agenda for this meeting is to review the agenda for tonight's regular council meeting. So let's go through that and see if we have any additional information or questions. We did go over it at our study session on Thursday. Currently, there's a couple of items off the consent agenda. That's agenda item 11A, which I'm pulling off because I'm declaring a conflict. So, Vice Mayor, we'll just turn the gavel over to you for that part of the meeting. And then I know we also have 10A, the liquor store or the liquor license for the convenience mart off the consent. So we'll consider that separately as well. And we've received, is there, Council, any questions on those items or anything else?
And Mayor, can I just say that just clarify, the way it's written for 10A, right, it would be for approval.
All right.
Am I saying that right? How did the council need to say something specific on that?
We'll make sure the motion's clear for your approval.
One way or the
Approval.
other, right, because, okay.
Yeah, so the way it's agendized is to take action to support a liquor license.
Normally, that's how we would do it. So if we want to do something else, then the motion needs to be specific. If it's different than that, that's all I'm saying.
Right. Got it. On that point?
On that point,
Yeah.
after doing a lot of research on the liquor license applicant and the property and the owner and such, I am in a position of consenting to the liquor license.
Okay.
And a lot of my reasons are, I found out that the business owner is also the business owner at the Mercado at 8th Avenue in McDonald. And that business is a neighborhood gem. It doesn't have incidents. It does have a liquor license there, but it is really part of the neighborhood, very community engaged. This particular business owner is now doing a secondary location, a country club in 8th Avenue, and continued to be engaged with Rail, the Better Block project, been proactive with PD and making improvements to the property. I went out and visited the property. It is very clean, safe, and has all the security measures in place. I went to the surrounding properties again, and the alley, it looks very clean. It's much better now that the property is occupied than it was previously. It has been vacant for about 3 years. Having a local active business owner is making the difference for me of wanting to approve for this application for a Series 10 beer and wine liquor license. So I'm in a different position. I've talked to residents around the area that are in support. I do also have residents who aren't in support and businesses that aren't, but I think that is taken from 2019, a little bit different situation with the business ownership and the plan. The business is open and operating, does a lot of business with crispy chicken, and it's has a good business in and out. So the convenience mart is leading with being truly a convenience mart and the chicken business, and have an accessory business of for the beer and wine. So it's not leading with alcohol, which is the position that I took in 2019, that it was a one that wasn't open, was asking for the liquor license, and I felt was leading with it. Across the street, just to the south of it, is the Circle K, and that Circle K has a lot of challenges, has a lot of problems. It does lead with liquor. I'm hoping by having this good business across the street that it'll detract from needing to go to the Circle K for your beer and wine and get your crispy chicken and some beer, and maybe have less business where there's so many problems on the south side. So I'm in support. I probably have some other notes on it, but that's where I am right now.
Okay, thank you. So it's off the consent agenda. At this point, putting it back on the consent agenda is a possibility. Although I have seen an email from, it seems like some folks supporting not issuing the license. So I think it is kind of teed up for folks to come in and tell us how they feel about it. Do you have a preference as to whether we keep it off the consent agenda or not?
Personally, Mayor, I think keeping it off the consent right now would be good.
Okay.
We can still vote on it, but we don't know that. They may call in too.
It's just,
I think there
Half
might be
second
already a
more,
couple
it's not
blue
a big
cards
deal.
pulled too,
Okay.
in support. So,
In support, okay.
So why don't
Well,
we-
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and keep it off the consent agenda then, and maybe we'll just.
It won't take that long.
This was a rehearsal of what we'll say upstairs, yeah.
Yeah.
And I get it. I mean, I think it would be very difficult to operate a convenience store and not be able to sell alcohol. And if this is actually more of a neighborhood business and it's a chicken restaurant and it's maybe the possibility of a business that contributes to the neighborhood, that was really, I think, our concern, is that this was a business that was going to detract rather than contribute to the success of the neighborhood. So I'm open to supporting a small business that comes in, offering something other than just additional alcohol, which the consensus seems to be is not what's needed in that neighborhood. So, okay, we'll keep it off the consent and we'll discuss it upstairs. Mr. Thompson, did you have an issue?
I did. I'm still leery of 5J. I pulled the bid paperwork for this, and this is a service-only contract. It doesn't include any of the materials, so it doesn't include the tires, weights, or lug nuts. It's strictly a service-based contract, and we're still paying almost $1 million a year for that service. And I have some concerns because I know that our crews are doing walk-arounds on their vehicles prior to driving the vehicles. I know it's required for CDL. They have to check the boxes before they can drive the vehicle, because if they get pulled over, it's a penalty. And so I really have some concerns on this. I struggle because that's a lot of money to be paying just for a service. If it included the tires, the weights, and the lug nuts all encompassing of changing a wheel, I might feel a little better with this, but as it is, $1 million is a lot of money, so I'll pull this one because I'm going to be a no vote on this.
Okay, 5J is off the consent. And why don't we, since we know we're going to have this discussion upstairs, why don't we hear from purchasing and maintenance?
Go ahead.
Upstairs.
You want to hear from upstairs then? Or what'd you say?
Well,
I'm
no,
sorry.
I guess I'm agnostic whether it's here or upstairs, but apparently we are going to be having the discussion upstairs because it's
Okay.
off the consent agenda.
Right.
So we might, rather than make you say the same thing twice, why don't we
Okay, wait.
do it
Yeah,
upstairs?
and this is just a contract for service. They still have to
Yeah.
bill us for it. We've just given you the estimated amount.
Yeah,
We don't write a check for $1 million, so.
okay, all right.
There's a different contract for the actual tires, obviously, right?
And
We already approved that, or,
come some other time. This is fine.
okay, I guess I can ask that
And I'm
upstairs.
looking forward to hearing more about it upstairs, but I guess the point is that this is done in the dead of the night and we have to hire people to come.
There's like 5 personnel around the city at different locations where we have fleet servicing these and being able to respond to our needs, yes. And again, it was, while it says sole source, it doesn't mean it wasn't bid. It was bid. It just means the other 2 proposals just didn't have the backup information, the qualifications, so they were eliminated. So it's not like, this is not the same contractor that we just go to over and over again. It's just, they end up being the only qualified bidder at the time.
That was going to be my question, Mayor, is whether the other applicants, if there were others and how many there were.
There were 2 others. It's in your, I think, council report. It talks about 2 others, what I have on here. Does that sound correct?
There were 2 others. Their pricing was a lot cheaper. They just didn't turn in all the paperwork that were required of them to turn in.
That's correct. The 2 vendors didn't supply any information on how they were going to meet the specifications of the contract.
Okay, well, let's be a good discussion. We'll do it upstairs. So Kevin, you got that? 5J is off the consent. So 11A, 10A, and 5J are off consent. Council, any other questions or concerns about the agenda for upstairs? All right, thank you. Next item on our agenda then for this meeting is agenda item 2A. It's a presentation to provide direction on the fiscal year 22-23 general governmental and utility funds, principles, priorities, and forecasts. Thank you for letting us bump you last Thursday, gentlemen. Good to have you here.
Yep, good afternoon, Mayor, Council. So this presentation is going to focus on the fiscal year 22-23, the budget principles, priorities, and forecast. And so this one will more focus on the expenditure side. And when we come back on Thursday, it'll be when we do an economic conditions presentation, that'll focus more on the revenue side. So this one will be more on the expenditure side. So starting off with the general governmental funds, just a reminder of our general governmental funds financial principles, and this is the 5 principles we take into consideration, and you'll see these principles worked in throughout the presentation. For instance, a balanced net sources and uses. And then also we try to we keep the fund balance over a 5-year forecast period between 10 and 15%. Also, we look at the sustainability of projects and services that we have currently, but also any new ones that are proposed to bring on. And then also, a big part is keeping wages and benefits competitive compared to other valley cities in order to retain and recruit quality staff. And the last but not least is the investment in capital and life cycle replacement projects.
So for the financial forecasting, we start with making sure we understand where the revenues and expenditures currently are, as well as looking at historical trends. We always forecast over a multi-year period so that we can assess the sustainability of existing programs and services, as well as evaluate potential new programs and services. Future needs are incorporated into the forecast, so if there are significant life cycle purchases, we want to make sure that we can proactively plan for those expenses. And then last, the city's financial policies call for the use of ongoing revenues for ongoing expenditures, so we don't want to cover ongoing expenditures with one-time revenues. When it comes to the revenue forecasting, the city belongs to a forecasting group out of the University of Arizona. They provide us with macroeconomic data for the state of Arizona and the Phoenix and Tucson metro areas. So we'll take that macroeconomic data, run it through our statistical software program in-house, and analyze the relationship between that data and our city revenue sources. The relevant indicators would be population, wage growth, and the employment market. All those are considered in the information we get from U of A. Oh, sorry. We include Mesa-specific factors, so we may trend similar to the state or the Phoenix metro area, but sometimes we see our own Mesa-specific patterns that we account for in the forecast. And then we also include an impact of an economic correction in the forecast beginning in fiscal 23-24. The city's taken a conservative approach to our revenue forecast when it comes to local sales tax, state income tax. Those can be subject to macroeconomic factors that are out of our direct control. For operational expenditures, we analyze each category and forecast them individually. So personal services, we take into account pension rates, medical premiums, salary movement. For other services and commodities, if it's a large specialty contract, we'll work with the department to figure out how we need to forecast that. And for general expenditures, we just apply the consumer price index inflation rate. For capital, we make sure that we include construction projects, vehicle purchases, life cycle purchases, to include those into our forecast. That kind of goes back to being able to proactively plan for any large expenses that may come in the future.
So on the next slide, these are the personnel priority expenditures that we have in the budget. Top one is the Public Safety Personnel Retirement System, or PSPRS. The contributions for 22-23 remain consistent with this current fiscal year and are included as funding paid towards the unfunded liability. Also, one of our priorities is the ASRS, or Arizona State Retirement System. That rate actually decreased slightly to 12.17%, up from it was 12.41% in this current fiscal year. Another priority is the medical premiums. They increased by 6% for calendar year 2022, and the premiums are forecasted to increase at 6% for calendar 2023. And then also included in the forecast is the 5% salary increase for all city employees that went effective January 31 of this year. And then also is the 3% step pay for all eligible employees, which would become effective the first full pay period in July of '22. But we also, with an ongoing evaluation of providing competitive wages. So
Brian,
that's
before you leave that screen, can I ask a question about the medical premiums?
yes.
Now, we have our own employee benefit trust, right? We pay the premium, the medical costs come directly out of the money that we manage, and we have a contract with Cigna to be the contractor that processes the claims, but we're not actually buying medical insurance from them. Well, I guess I mean that as a question, not as a statement. We're buying the administering the program from them.
Mayor, council, that is correct. They administer the program. The revenues and expenses come out of the employee benefit trust fund that the city manages.
So they help us with, so Cigna provides they help us, and we're out today, right,
Yeah.
for new health benefit services. So we will then evaluate their ability to provide a network of services and wellness programs and everything that benefits the employees in the, as far as what we're actually acquiring, but also included in there is the premium costs and controlling costs and how they can help manage claims and get us discounts.
So who arrived at, because like I said, we're not buying insurance from Cigna, we're paying the actual claims. Was it Cigna or was it somebody in-house who said, you know what, just the cost of medical care is going
So
up, we
in a-
anticipate 6%?
Outside of Cigna, we also procure a health services consultant contract. And so they look at trends across all parts of the healthcare industry. And that helps us when we look at what's in our trust fund, we see what the reserves are there, we see we can see historically the claims that the city has experienced and what we've paid out. And so we use the national trends, and that's how we come to a budgeted assumption of 6%, right? So we're making that assumption. And because at the end of the day, it'll come down to utilization by our own employees, right? It'll be the frequency of use as well as the value of the claim. So some years we may not have a relatively lot of claims, but we may have some high value claims that will impact our costs too. So all those things are taken into account as we project out what we anticipate the cost to be.
Is part of what we contract with Cigna for is their contracted rates with their providers?
That helps, yes, to manage those costs, yeah.
And so has Cigna said, hey, per our contracts with our providers, we're increasing our payments to our providers by 6%, and so we have to pass. I'm just wondering, how did we arrive at 6% if we have a locked-in, provider with contract? You know what I'm saying? Has the Cigna contract?
But all contracts that we have will fluctuate based on, I mean, they're helping us broker and get to procure the services, but they don't guarantee the rates, right? They'll still have to be negotiated. Again, these numbers we give to you are not necessarily from Cigna. They're more on the industry trends of what's happening, the experiences for employers our size and populations of our size. That's what we look at. And we can look at it from a historical perspective of our own claims, how much we've actually had to pay out. With Cigna or Blue Cross, we know what that looks like, and we can assess what those industry trends are. So it's not necessarily a locked-in guarantee from Cigna, because ultimately that will be driven by claims. We want Cigna to be able to provide us the best opportunity to provide high-quality services, responsive services to our employees, and manage our cost. But ultimately, those claims are paid out by us depending on, again, how much we use those services or the value of those services. So we have sometimes we'll have some very high, very expensive claims during a year, and that will become a factor in determining how much we pay out.
So yeah, Mayor and council, exactly what the city manager mentioned is we take a look at past and future, and we use a consultant to project out what our claims paid would be. And so that is the biggest portion of this 6%, but we analyze it. So the national average right now is between 7 and 8% increase, and some of them are about 10%. So this 6% is, this 6% and the 6% next calendar year. Our fund balance for the trust fund is still stable, but we take a look at those claims paid and see what that trend is of, do we have high claims or low claims, or what that average is, and then be able to then revise this percentage to be able to pay those claims, but then also in the future.
We hope that someone like a Cigna or a Blue Cross will help us manage those costs through their network and their network of care providers. Also programs that they can offer our employees. That's where our wellness programs come into. And we try to mitigate much of those costs. But at the end of the day, the claims are what the claims are, you know, it helps to have someone like a Cigna or Blue Cross who has a network, and they've kind of pre-negotiated a lot of the fees. And that's why we have in-network fees versus out-of-network fees. So we try to contain the costs as best we can. But even after doing that, again, using the consultant, all these costs are rising in this area.
Yes.
And actually, we had a discussion earlier today, because I chair the trust fund, insurance trust fund, and there was a comment made that other employers are seeing like a 12%, 15%, and based on the agreement that we have, and then the work of our internal staff on wellness programs, on other items, they've been able to keep it at 6% as far as the increase. But everybody's seeing a large increase on healthcare currently, and it's just interesting to know how our staff is doing a good job at maintaining some of this cost as far as not seeing those high increases this year based on what's happened over the last 2 years with COVID and other costs as far as claims that have been coming in. So we had a really robust conversation earlier this morning on
Mayor,
the trust fund.
one way it kind of looks like an insurance is the fact that it's a group plan, right? So you have thousands of employees, and I think we're at 10 or 12,000 when you count employees plus dependents that are covered by these plans. So that volume allows us to negotiate and try to manage these costs as much as we can, use that to our advantage in negotiating for these plans. But at the end of the day, as Councilman Rodriguez said, there's still increases. As you all know, we're implementing a lot of different programs for wellness. We have a wellness center that is highly utilized to the point where we're now increasing that because the popularity, and we didn't want to delay people from getting assistance. So we like the idea that people see it as a positive thing to go and use the wellness center. The wellness center was a huge benefit during this last year, 2 years, because we were able to provide in-house COVID testing for our employees. So we are working really hard this is a big expense in the city's budget, but any increment of savings, 0.5%, you know, fractions of a percent is real money that we can use for our city employees.
Okay. Well, I'm sure this is appropriate, and there's nothing more true in life than healthcare costs are going up, right, every year. So I'm not skeptical that that's the case, but I'm just trying to understand it, given that it wasn't just, oh, sorry, Cigna raised your price 6%. That's not how this works.
No.
So
And it is this is a budget estimate, and so at the end of the day, the actuals will be what the actuals are.
Yeah.
We just need Cigna and good partners like that to help us manage that cost as best they can. That's what we look for in those partners, is to help us to contain, manage, whatever you want to say, that cost in that network, and that's their benefit that they bring to us.
So we'll increase the premium, the contribution to the employee benefit trust by 6%, and then at the end of the year, we'll hope that we guessed good.
So yeah, Mayor, Council, this is just to put the amount in the budget. We do start analyzing this, the employee benefits. We start analyzing that in July and August, and we come back to council in September to propose a new adjustment for calendar year 2023, because that's for the open enrollment, because our benefits go from January 1 to December 31. So when we come back in September, we would have analyzed this, what the trends are, what percentage of increase may need for the following fiscal year, and then we'd be able to present that to council for their consideration. And that's when that percentage would be kind of locked in for the following fiscal year.
So remember, the health care providers are on a calendar year. We're on our fiscal year. So you'll hear about this again when we come back in the fall, because we do open enrollment at the end of the year to get people signed up. But we'll be able to tell you what the contracts are, and what we anticipate going forward. So this is a number we've anticipated for some time. As we get a new provider, we'll come back to you in the fall and give you an update.
Great, thank you. Please proceed.
So this is the ongoing, as Chris mentioned, we try to do ongoing revenues with ongoing expenses. So this is the priority for ongoing expenses. The next slide for other priority expenditures is more of one time. So department-based budget was increased by 5.17%, and that is primarily due to the higher than normal inflation over this past year. And then also with that, capital costs increased significantly due to the inflation. And that's one of the priorities this coming up fiscal year. And then also another priority is the Mesa Climate Action Plan implementation. So some examples of the implementation of that plan would be electric vehicle charging stations, the solar installation for the parking at 55 North Center, also the street lights, LED conversions, and some of the city facility energy efficiency projects. Another priority for the one-time expenditures is also facility improvement and renovations. For some examples are the Mesa City Plaza, or MCP, also the Mesa Family Advocacy Center, or MFAC, and then the Post. So those are some examples of the one-time revenues that we have been receiving that we're going to focus on this year for those one-time expenditures.
And Mayor and Council, specifically consider the Climate Action Plan. One of the proposals, or one of the thoughts we had, is that we've asked every department to give us a proposal of kind of how they would address goals in their Climate Action Plan, and we're taking tally of all those projects. Scott Boucher and Laura Heineman and that group are going to help us kind of create a ranking of those, and then what we're going to come to council is suggest kind of we're going to establish a dollar amount that we're going to set aside just for, regardless of which department it is, right, is a Climate Action Plan fund, and then they'll rank those, and then kind of like, okay, at a certain threshold of dollar amount, then we'll fund those this year, and then each year we'll kind of go through this, because we want to have everybody have a fair shake at getting the money, regardless of which department they're in, and let the environmental services folks kind of rank and decide which projects should be recognized first. So that's kind of the concept we want to use. That way we can do it across the board and look at all projects kind of on the same ranking and opportunity.
To this slide, the electric vehicle charging stations, I mean, there's been a lot of coverage in the press about the amount of funding in the bipartisan infrastructure bill that's earmarked for specifically that infrastructure. I think I heard on a local podcast that it's estimated that Arizona, it's about 100 EV charging stations is for the state of Arizona is what, for in the first year is what's included in that funding. So I'd just be curious to hear, not now, but in the future, how our city hopes to participate in that.
Sure.
Okay. So the next slide shows our 5-year forecast of the general governmental fund, and kind of to keep those principles in mind for the net sources and uses throughout the forecast. We try to keep it as positive. You do see some fluctuations between the actuals, the projected for 21-22, and then on out for the forecast. And that is due to what the city manager kind of just mentioned projected for fiscal year 21-22. We have set some one-time revenues. We are seeing a higher than anticipated revenues in contracting, sales tax, and a few other things. So we have set that aside. That's why the total uses are higher than the budgeted. And so we have set those monies aside. Also for setting aside also for the, as I mentioned, the infrastructure. We also set aside funds for one-time infrastructure needs such as the MFAC and this MCP and a few other projects. So that is why the projected for 21-22 for the net sources and uses is a negative amount. It's just setting aside that one-time funds for the one-time projects.
Yeah, so we're gonna have shortfalls in some of the projects we had in the last bond program, because by the time we're bidding them now, the prices have gone up significantly. So but we are benefiting from construction sales tax. So the idea is to try to we consider that one time, even though it's been happening every month, but we think eventually that'll slow down. So what we're proposing is to fund those overruns on capital projects that we've already been budgeting for to cover that cost. Also, we'll talk about this on Thursday, the renovations to MCP using those kind of funds. So we're trying to find these one-time project costs to invest in. The climate action plan, we may be one, although we hope to do that every year. So that's what that 45 is, just pulling those dollars out to recognize them as an opportunity for one-time expenditures.
So with that, even the ending fund balance, even all the way out into 26, 27, where we try to keep a 10 to 15, we show for right now, a forecasted 20.3% in the reserve fund balance, with everything that's been included for the salary increases, the step pays, and the one-time projects.
Now, this is the number before all the departments have come with their request. So we're in the middle of that right now. So don't get too attached to this number, because by the time I bring you the proposed budget, we're going through that review with all the departments about areas they've identified for additional expenditures, and then that will come into these numbers, and you'll see that change.
But this includes the 5%.
Yes, it already includes the 5% that we implemented in January, but already have included that in here going forward. So
This will be higher than 2023, right?
no, it'll probably be less than 2023. Unless they're willing to give money back for all their improvements, and that won't be, they'll be fine.
For next year, it's projected 28, or is it 30, 31,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
Yes.
So the year we look at is the last year, because that's where we're trying to balance to. Because there's a lot of one-time money coming in and out. But yeah, that's what we try to look to, is that final year, where do we stand? That's kind of how the rating agencies kind of go, okay, because it'd be easy, if you can just balance the next year, and then the years after that, it drops down to 5%. So anyway.
Mayor, Kevin and I were talking how depressed we are because we're not going to go to spring training games. What kind of impact is that going to make on our city budget?
So most of that we would expect to happen in, a lot of, obviously, visitors. So we think about visitors, first you think about bed tax, filling in hotel rooms. So certainly the bed tax would be, you could see some impact there. With that comes sales tax related to rooms and restaurants. The good news is people still come to Arizona in March. I just don't think it'll be zero, but it won't be as much, right? It won't be, I think this would have been a great year to see continued activity. I don't know if we've been able to quantify it, Brian and Chris. You put a little shave in there for it, didn't you?
So, yes, Mayor, Council, what we've estimated, just looking at a couple of guesses and some calculations that we've done, it would be, if we stayed just consistent with what we have been getting in sales tax revenues the past few months, taking out December because of Christmas, it would be roughly about an 8% drop in that month's. So it would be about $2 to $2.5, maybe $3 million drop in just that 1 month. So it would not be our second Christmas, but we're looking at it just being steady as all the other months of purchases.
So it wouldn't be special. It'd just be like
It'd just be a normal, regular month of sales tax.
So that's the delta.
So in a normal year, you'd see a 2 or 3% increase during.
It could be. I think we're shooting low, but probably more than that. But that's part because there's always that you're hiring people, and those people have jobs, and where do they spend them? We're giving you like direct numbers, so it probably could be more than that. But it's just hard to tell because we don't know what normal was anymore, right? Last year was abbreviated, and the year before that, last year wasn't even abbreviated. It was just, what do we call it? It was less capacity, right? And the year before that was abbreviated. No, they cut it off. So I think our point is, it's hard to guess because we don't know what normal is anymore, right? Until because it's been we've lost 2 years now, the third year. So it's really hard for us to give you a number, but certainly there is an impact. And we've built it in, shaved it down a little bit, but that's unfortunate.
So with that, moving on, we'll move on to the utility fund. And so the utility fund operations, just as a reminder, each utility is operated as a separate business. Reserve balance can be used to smooth rate adjustments year to year. And then also the reserve balance can be used to phase in any new programs that the city would like to implement. And then just a reminder also, the utility fund, we have 5 principles, just like the general governmental fund, very similar. Balanced net sources and uses, a 20% higher in reserve fund balance. Rate adjustments that are predictable and smooth throughout the forecast, so there's no spikes up or down. And then also equity between residential and non-residential rates, and then also the affordability of the utility services.
Brian, Mr.
Brian-
Thompson has a question for you.
Brian, before you leave that, how is the, on the reserve balances, because I know we pay a lot of our utility bonds out of the enterprise funds, right? How's the Signal Butte treatment plant going to impact? Has that already been taken into account in this?
That has already been
Yep.
taken into account.
That's why you'll see us
Yes.
try to spread those out. So when we get to almost the final slide, you can know that we've built that in, along with the other capital projects, the Central Main Pipe, all those are built into this.
So yes, we built the debt service in, but also the operation and maintenance into the forecast also.
For the sources or revenue forecasting, it's a very similar process to what we talked about with the general governmental funds, where we take a look at the macroeconomic factors as well as running it through our statistical analysis. In addition to that, we work very closely with each of the utility departments to forecast the account and the consumption growth. So each utility, some have different service areas, and so we make sure we work with the departments to review each of those service areas and what those growth rates will be. And again, similar to the general governmental, for Mesa-specific factors such as economic development activities and additional large customers. So if we know when that company is going to come on board and how much they're going to use, then we can include them into the forecast. For the uses forecasting, again, very similar to the general governmental, analyzing and forecasting each of the expenditure categories. For the utility fund, it does have large budget items that can fluctuate year to year, such as the water commodity price, chemicals at the water and wastewater treatment plant, and solid waste tipping fees that will have an impact on the fund. And then last, the debt service payments in the forecast are up to date, where we transfer those funds according to those utility debt service schedules.
So, and I won't spend too much time on this because it is a little of a repeat, but the priority, personal priority expenditures for the utility funds is the ASRS retirement percentage. The medical premiums are the same, 6% increase for calendar 22 and then also calendar 23. And then also the 5% salary increase for all employees. That was effective January 31. And then also the same 3% step increase for all eligible employees, with us also keeping a look at ongoing evaluations of providing competitive wages. And then same with the utility fund that we do with the general governmental, the one-time expenditures are also priority. So we did, similar to the general governmental, with the utility funds, their base budget was increased by a little over 5% due to the inflation. Their capital projects also, we have set aside funds for the increase due to inflation. We are seeing a lot of the projects, if not all projects, increase in costs. And then also in the forecast is the significant capital projects. For instance, the Signal Butte expansion, the East Mesa interconnect, the central reuse pipeline, and then also the advanced metering infrastructure, AMI.
So putting it all together, this is the utility fund net sources and uses table. As Brian mentioned, this includes the 5% salary increase, the step pay, the base increase, as well as the 4 project costs. You can see that the negative, the net source and uses in 21-22 is negative. However, throughout the forecast period, it does improve. And similar to the general governmental fund, we review this fund throughout the year and make any adjustments to the forecast accordingly.
So with that, just wanted to give you a reminder with that forecast that was just presented, the table before that includes the 22-23 forecasted utility rates. These were presented to council in December, and these were just an estimate. These are the rate adjustments that were used to calculate next fiscal year.
So, and Mayor and Council, remember, we won't review these until the fall. It won't be part of the actual budget. We do this in the fall, so they get, and I think today was the first day, or tomorrow was the first day of the new rates or that we put in most recently. So we won't come to count, it'll just give you a heads up, but we'll have that discussion on rates coming back after the summer break. And right now, this is just what's on the schedule, but as the council has done several times, they get adjusted and modified based on as we update the current financials for the utilities at that time. So we're just telling you what's on the future forecast, but they are subject to change and have been changed almost every year as we bring the new financials to the council. And again, we won't be looking at this until September.
Vice Mayor.
Is there an assumed or projected increase on the following fiscal years as we look at the ending reserve balance for 23,
Yes.
24? And there is, for
Yes.
this, there's an assumed.
And we can
increase.
bring, when we come back in the fall, we can show you what that looks like.
Yeah, we've discussed it before. I just.
Yeah, we just gave you the 1 year, because again, they change a lot, but
Okay.
yes, there is an assumption in each one of those years.
Okay,
That's
thank
correct.
It's the same assumptions that were presented in the
Yeah,
fall.
but we'll bring those
Yep.
back to you in the fall.
Yep. So then the next steps is this Thursday, we're at the council strategic planning meeting. We'll present the kind of economic conditions, kind of how the revenues are projecting out and what we're seeing. So we'll have that discussion. And then on March 31st, we will present the city manager's proposed 22-23 budget. And then in April, that's when we have fun with all the departments presenting all their budgets to city council. May 5th would be the budget wrap-up, and then May 16th would be the adoption of the tentative budget for 22-23, also the adoption of the CIP budget. June 6th would be the final adoption, and then on June 20th would be the adoption of the secondary property tax for the debt. And that's our presentation.
Great, thank you very much, Brian and Chris. So that was expenditures, we'll hear about revenues on Thursday morning? Okay, great, thank you very much, gentlemen. Council, any questions for these folks before we let them go? All right, thank you. Next item on our agenda, item 2B, is to take action on appointments to various boards. Is there a motion to approve that? Thank you, Mr. Luna, seconded by Ms. Spilsbury. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, that passes unanimously. Next item on our agenda is meetings and conferences attended. Who would like to share with us what you've been up to? Mr. Freeman?
Thank you, David, for letting me go first. I just wanted to share, Travis Cutright and his team went to the Mesa Chamber meeting and talked about cybersecurity. Travis, are you here? There you are, okay. I mean, you did a knockout job there. Everybody tried to break down your firewall, but they weren't successful. So you and Ty, right, gave your presentation. It was very good. So they were impressed, all the businesses. Appreciated that. Mayor and I and Vice Mayor, we had the Mesa Historical Museum, the Cactus League baseball exhibit opening is at the Mesa Historical Museum. So if you choose to go down there, it's a great exhibit itself. And then we had a Dreamscape tour this morning, and I'll let the others discuss on that. But other than that, I'm done. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Mr. Luna?
Councilmember Heredia and myself and you, Mayor, we actually met with Jorge Medina from Wyman's from Sister Cities, and they're really interested in participating in Dia de los Muertos. So we will have a celebration along with them during Dia de los Muertos. But of course, they encourage us to go to their Carnaval, which is going to be next February, not this year. And they wanted to let us know that they paved their main street, and they're expecting all of us there. So well, not all of us, but those that are on council. Anyway, that's it, Mayor.
Great. That's a great trip. We need to encourage everyone to go to Carnival. Other questions? Ms. Spilsbury and then Ms. Duff.
Last Thursday, the mayor and I attended a ribbon cutting in my district for Mind 24/7. It's a behavioral health facility that offers walk-in urgent care and substance abuse services, and it is filling that gap of it's available 24/7, and it's specifically for youth as well. So that's when you need help, is immediately, not for the next week when a doctor's appointment's available. So I just am really excited about it. I think it's a great facility to have in our city. They've only been open for a month and have already seen 600 patients, so it is needed, and I'm just really grateful that we have it. So, and then the Dreamscape tour at ASU this morning was incredible. We enjoyed doing that and seeing what could be coming to downtown Mesa, so that was exciting. And then House of Refuge, is someone going to talk about House of Refuge? The House of Refuge had their 25th anniversary fundraising gala on Saturday night, and that was, they're an incredible organization doing really great things in our city and surrounding cities, and so several of us were able to attend that as well.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Last Thursday, I went to Eagles Park for the We Run Mesa Youth Running Program award ceremony. So congratulations to all the little champions, and special thanks to Nicole Leba for creating and running the program, along with the support of Mesa PD. She couldn't run the program without their support. I have to thank Councilmember Heredia for inviting me to the Porter Elementary STEM night. This is a new district, Porter Elementary School, and it is a well-attended and exciting and inspiring event to see all elementary kids, all their ideas, and talking about coding and things that I know nothing about, but it was definitely inspiring. On Saturday, I believe it was, the mayor and I were at the honoring of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Gala at Red Mountain Community College, and honoring those who are supporting diversity, equality, and inclusion in our community. And that wraps it up.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate how active everyone is. It was a busy week. Mr. Brady, what does our schedule of future meetings look like?
Thank you, Mayor. We'll look forward to seeing all the council members Thursday for our strategic planning session at the studios at Mesa City Center. It will be the first official event at the center and so, the studios, so invite you there. We'll have breakfast will be available a little after 7. We'll start the meeting at 7:30. We do have a council agenda to review because you do have a council meeting the following Monday. But once we do that, then we'll get into the program that we've provided to you in the update. And so if you have any questions, let me know. Council does have a role at the end, so I know the mayor spent all weekend preparing, but we just want to have the opportunity for council to know that you're going to be asked to kind of provide some input at the end. And so there's not a lot of instruction, but it's more about just thinking about topics out into the future at different increments. And we'll write those down and then try to bring those together and find time to schedule those in the future. Oh, that's right. I think we found some, so we'll be good. Thank you.
I just want to make sure.
I'm really looking forward to going in that building for the first time since it's been rehabbed, so that'll be exciting. Council, if there's nothing else, that concludes our agenda for today. Is there a motion to adjourn this meeting? Thank you, Mr. Luna, seconded by Mr. Thompson. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. We are adjourned, and we will reconvene very shortly upstairs.